So I'm going to say hi. My name is Richard Collins. I'm the Managing Director and Founder of CSR Accreditation, the UK's only accreditation body for social responsibility. Today's panel is the workplace pillar. So the social responsibility pillars include environment, workplace, philanthropy, and community. The first session was the environment pillar. Today we are going. This session is going to be the workplace pillar, and I'd like to introduce Zamzam as our host. She is a member of our steering group and an independent CSR enabler with a wealth of experience from both private and public sectors. Her experience encompasses volunteering with the Children's Society in South East London, professional positions in corporate responsibility with the RELX group, and managing projects at the Financial Conduct Authority. Zamzam is going to be looking after you today and introducing our hosts in a minute. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the session. We'll be monitoring that, and we will allow for a Q&A at the end of each session. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Zamzam and leave you in her capable hands. Zamzam, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Richard, and for everyone for joining this session on World CSR Day to unpack workplace CSR practices. I'm Zamzam Osman, as Richard said, and I'm an independent corporate social responsibility professional and a CSRA steering group member. Today we have three esteemed guests here with us who will shortly introduce themselves. You may have noted that we actually had 4 panelists on the agenda, but sadly, Andrew Chamberlain of Consort Strategy has basically contracted coronavirus, so he's unable to join us today. We wish Andrew and anyone else battling with the virus a speedy recovery. We will be taking questions during this session, so please put any questions that you have in the chat box, anything that comes up for you, and we will endeavour to answer those. Our moderator is going to collect the questions and feed that into us towards the end, the last 15 minutes. On the panel, we have Ian Dennison from Investors of People to talk about standards and collaboration. We have Shirley Parson to take us through her journey of her company's transformation journey during the pandemic and the workplace adjustments they'd had to undertake, as well as Chanel Hansen, the founder of Developing the Inner You, who will give us some practical tips on ways to enhance workplace and well-being. I'll allow you guys to all personally introduce yourself. If we can kick off with Ian, please.
Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to today's session. My name is Ian Dennison. I'm the chairman of Investors and People, and I've been in a role for almost 3 years now, just coinciding with our move from being a government enterprise to being a not-for-profit community interest company. This is our 30th year of celebration. We have been an accrediting body for 30 years this year. And I do remember all those years ago when I was an early adopter of Investors and People in my days at Dulux, which was an ICI paints company. So I've had a long-standing relationship with Investors and People. I was instantly attracted by our mission, which is to make work better. We believe that by creating better work, you can create a better and more productive and healthier society. So for me, it was an instant attraction in terms of the organization. I've worked across multiple sectors over the last 35 years, and in my executive role, I've normally been the person who's been responsible at exec level for CSR, health and safety, HR, well-being and communications. And I'm really looking forward to today's conversations. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ian. Shirley?
Hi, everybody. I'm Shirley Parsons. Shirley Parsons is a specialist health, safety, environment, quality, professional services organisation. We provide recruitment and consultancy services actually across the world, so not just the UK. We set up in 2005, working from home, not too far from Aylesbury, with just 2 of us. And over the last 15 years, we've grown to a staff of 65 people across 4 offices, 1 in Aylesbury, 1 in Reading, and then we have 2 in America, 1 in Boston and 1 in LA. So our aim is to be global leaders in HSEQ, recruitment and professional services, and we're also aiming to become a responsible organisation, so we're working closely with Richard and his team on the accreditation side. So fingers crossed, we're going to improve our accreditation. Really looking forward to today's session and to hearing your comments and answering some questions.
Perfect.
Thank you very much,
Shirley. Sounds like you guys have gone through a lot of change, so it'd be interesting to hear how you found the transition. Chanel?
Thank you, Zamzam. Chanel Hansen, founder of Developing in the U, HR professional and transformational coach. Our company is dedicated to supporting individuals in their workplace so that they can overcome personal blocks that may impede their growth, as well as help them align them to their authentic self. I've seen over the years many changes to people's well-being, and it's really good to speak today around how we can help those individuals by delivering top tips, enabling flexi working.
Awesome, thank you so much. So just to give a bit of context and the background to this session, it's thought that the pandemic may help the workplace change for the better. There's a rethinking of the office and what that's going to look like in the future. And to give a bit of context, we'll be primarily talking about white-collar work. So a lot of organizations are undergoing transformation now, and existing and potential employee values are rapidly changing, as well as the business models. Actually, research from Harvard Business School said in a paper that I read by George Seferim, sorry, I can pronounce his name properly. His research on social impact shows that companies who practice CSR are more likely to be resilient in the face of unexpected shocks and hardships if they manage for the long term, care about their employees, are in line with societal movements such as inclusion and climate change. It seems clear that companies will be undergoing a lot of pressure to improve their social responsibility performance and dimensions in the future. But it seems that there's a lack of understanding of exactly where they should focus their efforts on and how they should communicate this. So on World CSR Day, we have brought together these expert panelists to talk through some of the positive things that have come out of their CSR workplace practices. Shirley, can you tell us how you and your team have adjusted during this period?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think it's quite scary to think it's nearly a year ago that we all had to begin the journey of working from home. So we had, I guess, a week from the 16th to the 23rd of March to get everybody set up working from home. Most people could do some work from home, but they probably weren't set up as efficiently as they could be. So that's what we spent the week from the 16th to 23rd of March doing. And I think we're fortunate that we employ a lot of local people. So a lot of people work within a 20-mile radius of Aylesbury, which made it much easier to deliver all the equipment and set them up with the necessary IT to work from home. And one of the guys came up from Reading to get all the equipment for the people from Reading. So it was a major achievement, and I think it's safe to say that none of us had really been involved in doing any Teams meetings before or Zoom meetings. I mean, personally, I wasn't really aware of Zoom. It just seems really odd now. But I think it was really important at the end of the first week, so that was towards the end of March, we got the whole company together on Zoom. And the 4 directors actually spoke about what was going to happen, how we were going to, work really hard to keep the company going. It was just reassurance. And I think it helped me because this is probably about the 6th recession I've been through in my business career. So it actually was quite emotional, but just talking to people and reassuring them that we would be here, that we'd get through this. And we not only did that call with everyone in the UK, we also involved the 2 offices in the States as well, because the 2 guys that run the 2 offices in America, they're both British, but They're both in their late 20s, so they were completely shocked about all this, never been through anything before. And we coached it through it. I think we've come really through it stronger, and the communication has been really good over Teams. So we continue having weekly meetings to reassure them. So that's probably the main things in terms of setting everyone up from working from home. I don't know, Zamzan, if you want me to go on to talk about the other things that we've done, or is it someone else's turn?
No, it's fine. What I'm actually hearing from you is obviously setting up everyone, making sure the workplace adjustments. But what stands out as well is that it's coming from top down. So it's the directors that have kind of communicating this in terms of making sure that everybody was well adjusted and could actually continue to do their day job in terms of the pandemic and maybe having family members who have COVID. How did you navigate that?
Well, we introduced a certain amount of flexible working so that some people with young children could do some work in the evenings. We encourage people obviously to communicate with us and keep in touch with us, just keep us informed as to how things were going. And we are divided up into teams. So every morning, each team would have just an individual meeting with their own team, just at the start of the day, to say what they were going to be doing that day. Was everybody okay? And it was just really keeping in touch and improving the communication. And we found actually what was a real positive was with the meetings, we found that they started on time, people arrived on time, and then people left on time, and they were much more efficient actually than, I have to say, the meetings that we had in the office, because sometimes people got sidetracked in the office and the meetings could deviate and take longer than, and you know, people would spend longer in the meeting in the office and then they'd be late for the next meeting. So we've actually found the Teams meetings to be great, and I think we'll continue with those when people do start coming back into the office.
Awesome. So there's a lot of positive changes that are coming out of it, and some that you will actually keep going forward. Thank you. Ian, what are some of the positive things that have come out of your workplace CSR practices in the last year?
One of the first things, Zamzam, is that I think we're all navigating what we've called the COVID curve. You know, people who are familiar with change management and change curves, I mean, COVID curve is no different. I mean, most of our clients came out of the early part of that curve, obviously confused, a lot of denial, and obviously working through some of the survival requirements to get through. Some sectors obviously survived, but I think most importantly, we were able to provide some practical support within our network and share some inspiration and insights and some thoughts about how to manage where you are in that particular COVID curve. Obviously, our approach is pretty tried and tested, and a lot of our clients took the opportunity to even bring forward some of their assessments to get a real insight into what their employees were thinking and how they can maybe make some interventions to improve the way things were being managed within their business. So obviously tried and tested, and it was useful for people. I suppose the other is we've actually, in a very, very timely way, we've actually introduced some new standards. So we've now got a health and well-being standard, and we've also got a new standard coming out around apprenticeships, which have been timely interventions for organisations to step back and think about in more focus, what are we doing for our young people, and what are we doing in terms of our health and well-being within our organisation. I suppose the other thing is the changing requirements of our community. A lot of our clients are increasingly saying, we want accreditation, but we also want to be part of a community of like-minded people who can talk to each other, who can inspire each other, who can actually share some insights into what they're doing. I suppose our role, and maybe Richard could comment at some point, I suspect CSR might find the same, which is people want to be connected and inspired. So accreditation is important, but people want to be connected and inspired as well. And I suppose the bigger thing, I suppose you're sort of talking about, Zamzam, is the impact on the workplace. And I think Shirley's given an insight into her workplace, but when we talk to our clients, there's quite a few things that are going on. One is the huge acceleration of change. Some things were happening, but actually they've been accelerated many years quicker than we would have expected. So alongside juggling family and children and homeschooling and lockdown, there actually are some real positive changes that are going to happen. I think people's expectations have been reset about what they expect from their employers and their workplaces, because they've had time to reflect. And I think there's a growing list of what we're calling no going back items, things that change forever.
Would you mind giving a few examples of that?
Yeah, if you don't mind me reading, I've got a couple of lists here. I mean, one is around working from home. Also an exception that remote working is real working. And some people had a very negative mindset that remote working wasn't real working, but it is. The opportunity not to have to commute on a daily basis into crowded, unsustainable cities. The fact that you can balance your life and your physical and mental needs with having a career, that these are things that should be able to work together alongside each other, and you don't have to compromise on one front or the other. I think mental and physical wellness has become heightened in terms of awareness. And I think organizations probably now realize there's a return on investment. If you invest in your employees' mental health and physical health, you will have a productive, happy and engaged workforce. I think the other is about loosening control. We see a lot of managers and leaders loosening control is not losing control. So we've seen a lot more trust in the workplace than maybe we had historically. Also, leaders have become more accessible, informal, less structured in the way they're doing things. And that's actually created a heightened energy with some leadership teams. And also leaders are human and they need to switch off every now and then. And that's become more acceptable as well. And I think the other big thing is a big hunger for why and purpose. So a lot of people are saying, why am I here? What am I doing in this company? And what's our purpose as a business? And the last couple of things I would say is one, a huge drive on inclusion. And the other is the connection to community. People want to be part of a bigger and better community. They want our organizations to connect with their local communities. And I think what's happening is also physical, what we want from our workplaces. Our workplace is a place maybe in the future where you don't do transactions. It's the place where you connect. It's the place where you create culture. It's the place where creativity happens. But maybe the workplace has changed forever. It's not the place you go to just to do work and be present.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Ian. I will, some of the things that you've pointed on already kind of is something I was going to ask Chanel, how people are finding well-being and how top executives are handling that within their firms. But I have a question for you. For someone who would say, too many companies are embedding a tick box exercise, they're taking your standards and they're just ticking them off the list. What would you say to a person like that?
Is the question referred to me or to Chanel? Sorry.
No, sorry, it refers to you for some of the organizations of what you've been seeing in the developing changes that have been happening. How do you differentiate between a company that's actually serious about its social responsibility as to a company who's doing a tick box exercise and just saying, okay, we've got a pandemic checklist and this is what we're gonna.
Yeah, I think that if we're honest, organizations become accredited for 3 or 4 reasons. One is some organizations want to get some recognition for what they're doing, and they want that public recognition. Some people do it because they're generally driven by quality and they want to have a quality standard. And then more increasingly, people do it because they want to transform and change and improve, and they want to use accreditation as a way to get there. And we're seeing that as a growing number of our population. But also the other thing is our accreditations have to adapt to the new reality. So we have to adapt to remote working, home working, different societal expectations. So the accreditation of the future is going to have to adapt for that. And we're already doing that in the way that we run things. So you can't get away as a tick box, because one of the things obviously any accreditation does is say, does the ambitions of the boardroom match the reality on the ground? And the whole assessment process is to double check that happens.
Yeah, and what's great about that is as well, you're offering a community. So if something is not working, they've tried it and it's not working, there's opportunity to discuss that with the other members within your membership base on what's working for them, and kind of if it's worked, they can stick with it knowing that it's going to have the long-term goal that they're looking for.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Chanel, So if I could please address the same question to you, what have you seen, from the top executives that you coach? What has been the thing that's kind of stood out for them?
Thank you. As a coach, I advise my clients that there are so many different ways to enhance workplace well-being. Fundamentally, it's about the core principles around creating an understanding, inclusive workplace where people feel comfortable and supported. Some of the things that we touched on, that Ian touched on, was about creating a warm environment, enabling flexible working, offering employees different hours that suits their different needs. Trusting people to work outside the 9 to 5, that could actually help build their self-esteem and contribute towards their well-being. And another tip would be including workplace perks. This can vary from workplace to workplace, but overall it's about making sure that employees are recognised. And one thing that I would say mostly was about encouraging breaks. So it's really important as an employer that we are tuned into, that yes, we do have busy lifestyles, and that sometimes people can skip their lunch and break time. So just checking in with them, making sure that we communicate and emphasize the importance of well-being.
Great, thank you so much for that. Shirley, you mentioned that these are some of the things that you've started to implement from early on for your firm, especially the flexible working and the innovative online communications. Could you tell us a bit more about that? Some of the practical things you've done?
Yeah, so in terms of innovation, we celebrated our 15 years in business in October last year, and ordinarily we would have had a big party, we would have invited clients along, candidates along, but I think we were all determined that we weren't going to let the milestone pass without some sort of celebration. So what we decided to do was have a fundraising effort. So we chose a local charity which was voted for by the staff, which was PACE in Aylesbury, which is looking after children with cerebral palsy. So we decided that we'd have different challenges for the staff around the number 15. So some people play golf, so they went out for a golf day, played 18 holes, but they put their 15 best hole scores in, and luckily the person who won decided to donate all their prize money to the fund, which was very commendable.
Was this virtual golf, Shirley?
Pardon?
Was this virtual golf?
No. In October we were actually allowed to play golf. They were open. Sadly they're not at the moment, but then fingers crossed they will be next month. So that was one thing. We had a group who decided that they would walk 15 kilometres, and I think there was about 8 people that decided to do that. On the day it was absolutely pouring down, not a great day for a walk, but they all turned up and they all managed to complete it. I think they had a stop at a pub on the way round, so a bit of celebration and some photos. Another lady donated some artwork she'd done, the proceeds from that. Some people made cakes. It was just really good, and we raised 2,500 so for the charity, and it was a great team building exercise. So
it's incredible how you used fundraising in a times of in a time like this to band the team together and to do a good thing as well, to raise money for the charity.
Yeah, so also a local, I think it was 3 Counties Radio, contacted me and asked me a few questions about what we'd done. So I did my first ever live radio interview, which was a little bit daunting, but it seemed to go okay. But I think the emphasis throughout it all was to try and keep the fun element in our business going, because most people that work here are, I would say the average age is probably late 20s. So they just want to be sociable and involved in things. So the other thing that we've done is we have what we call weekly wrap-up meetings on a Friday at 4:30. So we go through what's happened in the week, anything good that's happened, any business that's been won. And the other thing we've done is kept in touch with clients by organising webinars on particular aspects of safety, environment and quality, which have gone down really well and have kept us in touch with our clients, which has been good. Because up until last year, we had a huge emphasis on meeting people, because at the end of the day, we firmly believe people do business with people, and the face-to-face meetings were really important. But we haven't been able to do those, obviously, but we've kept it going in other ways, which has been really good.
So the online collaborations have really taken off.
Yeah, I think so. And also our clients are all over the country. So I think, as Ian said, it saved a lot of travel. And sometimes, well, often clients are really busy, but they'll agree to have a sort of 15-minute catch up with you over a Teams meeting, and it helps them as well. They don't feel guilty if they take you all the way to the other side of the country just for a 15-minute meeting, which we've proved isn't always needed. So that's been good.
And that saves,
and it helps the environment as well.
Saves costs. Yeah, I was just going to say that saves costs to the business as well. So in terms of transportation and costs, other costs.
I think keeping agile and being flexible has been the key, really, to the last year, to keeping going and keeping the business going. So,
awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. So I'm just going to ask Chanel actually a question. Since the pandemic, with thinking about your own organization, have you had to stop, start, and maybe deprioritize some elements of your business to keep going?
Absolutely. It required me to think outside the box and reflect on what's working, what's not. And something that Ian mentioned earlier is the why and purpose, really getting clear. So during this transition, actually, I then got really clear on who I wanted to serve. And I think the well-being came out more, and engaging more on the CSR practices. Something that came up in the chat box was preparing organisations for those people that maybe can't go back to work. So I think Jennifer mentioned about some people may not have to go back to work or may have challenges. So it was about me coming up with a wellbeing assessment to help organisations identify employee needs. So there was a lot of changes internally in terms of my processes.
Awesome. And looking at the current landscape now, Ian previously mentioned that some of the things that would have taken organisation a long time, maybe decades to implement, has been implemented during this phase, and especially with diversity and inclusion and gender, more women on boards, and more diverse people within the organisation as a whole. Is this something that you support your clients with, and something that you've seen a change in?
Was the question at?
It's for Chanel.
Okay.
Sorry, could you just repeat that question, Zamzam?
Absolutely. So Ian mentioned earlier that there have been a lot of changes that have been adapted to recently that maybe organizations would not have picked up if there wasn't a pandemic happening. So it's accelerated a lot of the work and it's been implemented, especially on the D&I front, I think. Would you say this is something that your clients, so looking out on the other end, have incorporated into their businesses?
Yeah, a lot more? Yeah, absolutely. There have been some key challenges, and that's around understanding the employee needs and adapting policies as well, so that they're on the return, hopefully when we come out of lockdown 3, there's a smooth transition. And something that Stephen mentioned in the chat was around communication. So communicating with our employees on a regular basis is a must.
Awesome. And over to you, Ian, but looking more from your organization perspective, is there anything you had to stop, start, deprioritize? How have you found the whole experience?
I think if we're honest, I mean, obviously we're an SME in our own right. Like a lot of the people on the call, we're not a large business. And we've navigated our own COVID curve, from being very difficult at the beginning, having to reposition the business, take everything virtual. So obviously a lot of our assessments, a bit like Shirley said, a lot of our assessments were face-to-face. So we've had to rethink the way we do the investors and people accreditations. So it now can be done literally on a virtual basis. We've had to make some difficult decisions. We've had to focus on things that are absolutely key and essential. Because ultimately, if you don't survive a crisis like this yourself, then your purpose doesn't survive either. So we've had to rethink the way we run our business and what we focus on as a business, and take our people with us and be very open and honest about how we need to reposition the business in the future, and take them with us. And sadly, we've had to let some employees go as well. So there are some difficult decisions we've had to make as a business. But also putting the well-being of our people front and center, because if our own people are on health and good well-being, then clearly they can't give of their best. So some of the things that Chanel talked about, and we've actually actively made sure we've done regular check-ins. We've made sure that people have access to support. We just made the whole business a little less formal. From the board down. I mean, we don't run so many deep, long meetings anymore. They're short, they're snappy. There's a social part as well as a business part, making sure people just feel connected, which has been really important for us. And we've just been amazed at how many people have stepped up. People that you never expected to do certain things have done things way and above what they'd expect to do normally. And I think been liberated by actually the challenge of actually getting through what we've got through. But also because they want the purpose to still be maintained in their business. So it has actually been quite a liberating experience as well as a business, as well as a tough experience. And then we've done things a bit, I think Shirley mentioned, we've done, for example, all our awards have been online this year. So we've had to run our whole awards ceremony online, but our biggest ever applications for awards. And that has been quite liberating. People quite like celebrating what's going on in their business. But then I'm honest to think, this third lockdown, we're now seeing the signs of fatigue. I think the first two, they coped really well and we got through it. This third one, this one is taking everyone a lot harder. It's hitting people a lot harder. Even with the glimmer of a vaccine, I think this is the most difficult one of all. But I think what we're taking energy from is what sort of future do we want to create? And we've been talking to our clients about what future do you want? If we're going to build back, how do we build back to something that's better, that the norm is actually better than it was in the past? And we've come up with 7 commitment areas, which our clients, we're talking with our clients about and actually maybe making this a focus for the future. The first one is to make sure work is agile and flexible, which might sound very basic, but if work is agile and flexible, it's more inclusive. It gives more opportunity for people. The other, and also trust is at the foundation of it. The other is that we design work for people, not for resources. And for us, that means even adopting things like the real living wage. People need to be paid fairly. And I think going forward, expectations have been raised. Make sure that your work is diverse and inclusive. And that's quick to say, but difficult to make happen. There's some long-standing non-inclusive behaviors, and we need to raise our game as a country and as a society. Make work that benefits your local community. People like to be connected to their local community, and that's been very, I think, engaging for people in the last 6 or 12 months, where employers have given them the chance to be connected with their community. Make sure your work is designed to enhance well-being, not damage it. And that's easy said again, but well-being should be at the heart of how you design jobs. And the last couple would be make sure you create work that invests in young people. Because if you don't have the young generation coming through, you haven't got your lifeblood. And the last one is make sure your workplace is greener and more sustainable. So for us, 7 big commitments that we're actively championing, which I think is giving our team a focus about how we move things forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. From listening to the other panelists, it seems like a lot of those 7 points have been incorporated. Shirley, in hearing the 7 points that Ian just mentioned, how have you found this in terms of the communication aspects as well? Now that you're holding the coffee calls, how have you found that your employee engagement is working out?
Yeah, they've been really good. So we just have small groups meeting up for a coffee for half an hour. So maybe once a fortnight. So the groups change so that you get to talk to different people, and the conversation is generally more social rather than about work. So just making sure, how are people getting on, how are they coping with the homeschooling, which has been a particularly difficult for some people. I remember one occasion just asking a lady a question, and she just burst into tears, and obviously just listening to her for half an hour, and then she said afterwards she felt a lot better. So I think it's just making sure you're available for people. So we've now moved those into a slightly longer, more confidential session, which is aimed at people just joining to de-stress. And I think mostly the people that have joined are the ones with children under the age of 10, because it's been particularly difficult. I mean, I'm fortunate our 2 children are grown up, but I have got 2 grandchildren. So when we were allowed to, we had our grandson staying, and that proved to be a challenge. So I can understand it. It's really difficult. And some days I just thought, you know what, I'm not going to teach him spelling or maths. We're just going to go out on a nature walk. And so I sort of, we just go on more of an adventure. So I've been encouraging people to do that. Ian mentioned that you'd had your awards online. That's something that we did as well. So we have an annual awards ceremony, an AGM, and then an awards ceremony in the evening, which we hold in January. So we decided this year that we were going to go ahead with it anyway. And so we had to put a team together. We dedicated a lunchtime session to looking at what we were aiming for to achieve this year. Then we had a team building exercise, which was an escape room, which personally I found incredibly challenging. Couldn't do it at all. And then in the evening, we had an awards ceremony. We had one of our client services director, who was a very good compere. We had a backdrop a bit sort of similar to what Ian's got now, but we call our awards the Shirleys. So we had a backdrop of that. It was a bit like the Oscars. We asked people to dress to impress. We gave people a takeaway voucher that they could spend where they wanted to, and then we organised for them to receive a present each of, you know, nibbles to eat on the night and a small bottle of Prosecco and so on. So it was actually really fun, and I understand it went on till probably gone 11 o'clock in the evening. I didn't stay for all that, but I think people just enjoyed getting together and sharing some jokes and celebrating, obviously, people's success. So that was really good. So yeah, and hopefully we won't have to do it again next year, but I think we've got some good tips for going forward. It's all about keeping in touch, really. And then I don't know if you want to move on. There's a question on the chat line about encouraging employees to return to work. So
we're going to go to the questions shortly,
sorry,
Shelley, if that's all right. But
okay,
no,
yeah,
it's fine,
sure.
totally fine. I'm really pleased that you've put some good notes in there for anyone who's delivering a virtual event that they can pick up from what you guys have done with the awards. So it's fantastic. I in particular like the dressing up.
Yeah, and actually everybody did dress up. It was good fun.
Awesome. And for the next section, actually the Q&A session, we have my colleague Owen, who's the moderator, who's going to be feeding the questions in for us. Owen?
Yeah, hi everybody. So to kick off, Shirley mentioned there have been a few questions on the chat room. There's in particular that's been in the media quite recently as well. Does CSRA have anything to address the impact of working from home on women particularly, to ensure that there's no indirect discrimination and support the mental issues there?
Ian, is that one you'd like to volunteer to pick up?
Yeah, I can't speak for CSRA, obviously.
No, it's just the standards to support women.
I think ultimately, I think at most accreditation organisations, as I said before, try to make sure the ambitions of an organisation and the senior leaders is matched with reality on the ground. And the only way you can do that is to actually physically gather evidence. And that means you need to talk to people, you do your surveys, you do your focus groups, you do your one-to-one interviews. And if these sort of things are evidenced in the workplace, clearly organizations would not be meeting the standards that we're all trying to set. So I would address it through obviously assessing standards. Then the other is obviously addressing it through, I would say, thought leadership. So you're trying to provide a spotlight and an awareness around this being a potential issue that maybe wrongly, societally, maybe there's still too much pressure on a lady with a career than a man with a career to juggle the family requirements at home. And you need to put those things into the open space so people talk about it, and it's something that can be raised and people listen to it. So I think, yes, you can try and do something as an accreditation body by taking proper evidence, but the other is to raise awareness of the issue. And then there's an opportunity for people to raise it and be listened to if they're experiencing it.
Would any of the other panelists like to chip in? Would any of the other panelists like to chip in?
I think for, oh, sorry.
No, absolutely, go for it.
I think for women, it's been particularly difficult, and I think I've heard quite a few women saying that the onus of homeschooling has fallen to them more so than their partners. I don't know if other ladies have experienced that. In some ways, working from home has been a bit easier for them because they've got more flexibility. But in other cases, it's been more difficult. I think what's really good is it's become more acceptable for children to appear on a call. So, for example, one of our senior managers has got a young daughter who's 5, and she regularly comes on, and she's already quite outspoken. So I was saying, I think she could be a future employee because she just comes on and asks questions and what you're doing this for, and I think that's been actually quite a positive impact. You know, everybody's got lives, you know, everybody's got family, children, pets, and it's become accepted that they can join in. So it's
being allowed to be people.
Yeah, and I think it's made it easier. But yeah.
I'd certainly, Shirley, I'd have that on my no going back list. The informality of business meetings has possibly been changed for good.
Yeah.
If we're going to impose on your life at home, and we have a little window into your life, you have to accept everything you see in that window. So I mean, that's a fantastic change. You know, having maybe meeting with the chief exec, having the dog barking in the background, is life. So I think things have changed for the better, despite all the pressures, all the things that people have had to cope with.
Yeah, I think so.
Great.
A couple of questions sort of tied into one here, Zamzam. Firstly, do you think that the changes have made businesses more productive? And on the back of that, how do you think businesses can monitor the performance of their staff when so much of work is remote?
Okay, so are businesses more productive now, and how do we measure efficiency now that people are working remotely from home? Chanel, do you want to start us off?
Yes, thank you. I think it is around checking in, keeping in touch days with your employers, but also looking forward is looking at, well, how do we then recruit and address well-being through the onboarding process? So are we writing the right question? Are we asking the right questions? Do we make people feel comfortable around disclosure with any well-being issues that they might be experiencing? As a hypnotherapist, there's a number of clients I've seen who've perhaps had adversity, perhaps people dying in their families over the last year, divorce, and I can name a few others. But it's how do we manage that if they do feel that it's stopping them in their work?
Are people are the executives you're coaching saying that their people are being more productive now during the pandemic, or they're saying people are doing less work and as a result business is suffering?
Yes, that they are being more productive, given that they are allowing them to be flexible, but it's that understanding and making sure that we ask the right questions. So an example might be that they won't be maybe delivering all their outcomes between 9 to 5, but they might do a bit of work in the evening. So it's about employers being really flexible on expectations. So that will lessen the stress.
Anyone else like to chip in?
I don't think it's an easy thing to answer, if I'm honest. I think some environments productivity has improved because people have been more focused. They've been able to actually focus on what they're doing and not have the interruptions of other things around them. They've had less need to commute to and from work, therefore they've changed where they spend their time. But also my worry is a lot of people are always on. They're constantly on, because you never switch off because work's always there in front of you. So I don't think it's an easy answer. I think a lot of transactional work can actually be done more productively from a home environment sometimes, but you've got all the other distractions of running your home as well. So I don't think it's an easy answer. And I think, as Chanel said, if an employer has the ability to allow people to do the work when they can best do it, and therefore you're encouraging them to do the right output, not about the time and the presence that they're there, then you can make it really work well. If your work isn't that sort of rhythm, then it's probably more difficult. So I don't think there's a single answer. There's no one fits all type answer. But I'd hate us to go down a process where people are being monitored.
Yeah,
that's just breaking trust. And I think, as I said before, loosening control doesn't mean you lose control. You have to still have trust. And I know there's technology out there now can measure how many times I've hit keystrokes and how often I've got the computer on and all the rest of it. If we go into Big Brother, that'd be dreadful.
So, Ian, that feeds into another question. You've mentioned trust on a few occasions. Yeah. Some organisations are very traditional still, even after the pandemic. How do you think we can, as a society, overcome those trust issues in business?
To be honest, I think. Were you posing a question to me? Sorry.
Feel free to take it, Ian.
I was going to throw it the other way around. I think eventually, Shirley will probably tell you this, there's going to be another war on talent coming up soon, because there's so much skilled resource out there. I think those employers who don't have high levels of trust, who don't move on, are going to find themselves to be completely unattractive to future workforces. So I think there'll be a natural self-selection, and we'll hopefully leave some of those archaic behaviours behind.
Yeah, I would agree with Ian. You've got to trust your staff, really. One of the challenges for us is that obviously a large part of our work is recruitment, and we've had clients cancel roles, we've had clients put them on hold, we've had start dates deferred, we've had candidates having second thoughts. Do I want to take the risk of joining a new company where I don't know anyone, and it's going to be more difficult to get to know them? So we've definitely had those challenges to overcome, and we've just tried to work together on it. And some weeks have been particularly tough, I think. But I suppose because we're in health and safety, which is pretty much an essential service, that we've been lucky in that we've been able to keep a lot of our roles. And some people even started a new job and they haven't met anybody other than over Teams, which, think about that a year ago, it never would have happened that you would have interviewed somebody remotely and given them a job offer without actually meeting them face to face. So definitely changes have happened. So it's interesting. And I think we've all got used to the fact that home working is going to happen in the future in some form or another, and it's probably brought it forward that it is possible to do, as long as you do have that trust.
I think the only population that we sort of ignore in these conversations is your frontline, blue collar, team delivery type employees. A lot of the key workers who've actually their life is pretty well stayed as it was. They've had to go to work, do the things they've had to do. Maybe there've been some adjustments in the workplace to make them COVID secure, but in reality, they're still doing the job out there. One of my previous businesses was a frontline type business offering public service, and their world's not changed. And they've still had to balance all the things back at home as well. So it's not been the same. I think there's been a little bit more liberation for office-based white collar type employees. For blue collar, I don't think the change is as significant. However, their expectations are also changing. So there is going to be a workplace conversation about how do we engage our blue collar frontline delivery employees so they feel valued. Everyone who was a key worker felt quite proud to be a key worker. I would hope that carries on after this crisis is over.
Yeah, definitely.
Sam, I think we've got time for one more very quick question. One of the guests is currently helping a company with their implement CSR into their business. They're a small legal business, two employees, but 11 consultants spread across the whole country. Has anybody got any suggestions on how they can engage their team?
So CSR programs is it CSR program as a whole, or is this person referring to volunteering?
CSR as a strategy and program, I guess, into their business. And I think they're just asking for any advice or help on how they can engage the team of consultants and staff, because they're spread across the whole country.
Chanel, do you have some tips?
Yes, I think one of the events that I launched was Unleash the Leader in You, and it was a virtual platform event that took place in January. And one thing that I have seen more so over the last event and going forward is that thing around coming together and community. There's a number of different wellbeing events that promote people to ask questions around, coming away from the laptop and taking a break in the day. So I would say it's around looking at what community online events are there accessible within their local area. Yeah, I would say that that's one of the things that I've seen mostly encouraging.
CSR accreditation is another excellent firm that you can consult in terms of development of the strategy. Ian, I feel like you have something to add.
No, to be fair, I think you've probably answered the question well, Chanel. There is a question in the chat that we haven't covered, which is around people who basically want to get back to work. For them, home work is not the answer. And I was reading some research only yesterday, which is quite recent, quite new, which says 10% of our employees never want to go back to the workplace. They want to work from home forever. 10% roughly are desperate to get back. They do not want to spend any more time at home. They've had enough, thank you very much. And then we've got 80% in the middle who basically want something in between. And that's obviously becoming the hybrid type workplace. And I think what's happening is employers are going to have to be able to accommodate all three of those requirements somehow, if they can, which means rethinking what the workplace looks like. And Shirley's got a lot of nice desks behind her there.
Yeah, all empty.
You might not need so many of those in the future, but equally,
exactly, I know.
you want to keep the culture of your work team together. So you're going to have to accommodate all of those three requirements going forward, probably, and still retain what you've always had as a team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest change, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's harder for young people as well, because they want the social life. You know, they might not have partners and children and all the rest of it, so their social life is really important to them. And I think if they're working from home with a laptop on their laps, literally, or sitting on the end of a bed, it's really not ideal at all.
Mm-hmm.
And we've always said to our staff, you can come in, we've got plenty of space here. If you feel that, you know, that you need a break, or you want to see some people because of your mental health, then come in. So we had 5 people in yesterday, which was really great, and which is back to 2 today. So
yeah,
I think gradually people will start coming back.
Yeah, and I will just also mention that home working isn't maybe for everyone. Home might be flat sharing, it might be in a room. So we really do need to give consideration to asking the right questions when we're re-onboarding people back into the workplace. It's almost like a reinduction. But just asking those questions are really paramount, because mental health is on the rise, and we need to really encourage others to feel free to have these dialogues.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much for basically sharing those responses to the answers we've provided to you, and for answering the questions of our delegates today. We want to keep the conversation going, and this is just one amongst many webinars that CSRA is planning for the future. So all in all, I mean, it seems like it's different for different companies, and it's based, it's all, whatever CSR strategies you embark on, is thinking about long-term, thinking about employee well-being. And one thing that keeps coming up is mental health, as well as, with the recent policy changes that are happening, thinking about fair employment practices and labour practices. So I will leave it at that, and thank you all for coming. I'll hand back to Richard.
Thank you very much, Zamzam, for hosting today's panel. Thank you, everybody, for participating. This was the second in the Future Shape of Social Responsibility, which is in celebration of World CSR Day today. There were some lovely takeaways from that. I certainly think shared insights for me was about that connectivity and working together, and that why and purpose. We're very interested in the idea of emotional investment, so emotionally investing in the well-being and enriching the quality of life of staff by allowing social responsibility to be part of their job description. And this not only has a really positive impact on mental health and well-being. Social responsibility is about something good. It makes you feel good, but it's about delivering purpose and value, and it does create that engagement, whether you're remote working or working from the office. So thank you ever so much. There's some great stuff there. On our website, we have a resources page. There's a brilliant tool which is called Where Are You on Your CSR Map. It allows you to quickly have a look at an interactive toolkit that kind of helps you assess where you are on your journey. Also, I'd like to flag up the fact that we have an online training course, which is about creating CSR enablers for the future. And of course, it would be remiss of me not to mention to have a look at our accreditation program, which is a really lovely way in which organisations can use the 4 pillars of social responsibility to look at what they are already doing and to start that benchmarking and that social responsibility journey. So thank you ever so much, everybody, and hopefully we'll see some of you again. We've got 2 more sessions today, one on community coming up, and then finally one on philanthropy. So once again, thank you ever so much for your participation.